It was dusk when Alara Whitmore stepped off the rusted bus, suitcase in hand and heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. The air smelled of wet soil and distant pine. The gravel beneath her boots crunched with each hesitant step as she made her way up the dirt path leading to the place that had haunted her dreams for 17 long years. Blackridge Manor. Time had not been kind to it. Ivy strangled the once proud stone walls, and the windows were blackened like eyes too tired to cry. The gate, once iron-wrought and strong, now stood crooked, swaying with each gust of wind like it was whispering warnings too late to heed. Alara stopped at the front steps. Her fingers brushed the silver locket around her neck, the only thing she had left from her mother. Inside was a photo, slightly faded, of 3 people smiling in front of this very house. Her father, arm wrapped around her mother. And a little girl, Alara herself, only 7, clutching a red balloon and wearing a dress stitched with her name. The night they vanished, she had heard them screaming. She'd run to the attic and found nothing but a smear of blood on the floorboards and a mirror that refused to reflect her face. And then, darkness. She was found the next day, unconscious in the garden. No one believed what she claimed. Her aunt took her far away to the city. She never returned. Until now. Something had called her back. Not a memory. Not guilt. A voice. Every night for the past month, she heard it, faint, desperate, pleading. Come home, Alara. She didn't know what it meant. But she knew she had to come. With trembling hands, she pushed open the front door. The hinges groaned like an old man waking from a nightmare. Inside, dust danced in the stale air, caught in shafts of dying light. The hallway stretched longer than she remembered, the wallpaper peeling in patterns that looked like claw marks. The silence was louder than anything she'd ever heard. And yet, she felt watched. She climbed the staircase, each step creaking under her weight. Paintings of her ancestors lined the walls, their eyes seeming to follow her as she passed. One painting had been slashed across the canvas, Alara's great-grandmother, her face torn clean away. In her old bedroom, the bed was untouched. The small wooden doll she'd once slept with sat silently on the pillow, head tilted, one eye missing. Everything was the same, yet wrong. The shadows were thicker, the air heavier, the quiet more violent. And then, from the ceiling above, a loud thud. Her blood ran cold. The attic. It always started in the attic. Alara reached the top of the narrow staircase, her fingers trembling as they wrapped around the cold iron doorknob of the attic. This door hadn't opened since the night her parents disappeared. Her breathing slowed, more from fear than control. A soft creaking sound came from within. Not wood, not wind, footsteps. But who could be inside? She pressed her ear against the door. Silence. Then, a whisper. Faint, feminine, sad. You're late. She threw the door open. The attic was pitch black. The bulb overhead flickered, barely lighting the far corners. Boxes, old trunks, sheets covering antique furniture. The mirror stood tall at the center of the room, its surface cracked like a spiderweb, but intact enough to reflect something twisted. Her, but not quite her. Her reflection didn't move in sync. It blinked slower. It tilted its head differently. And then, it smiled before she did. Alara stumbled backward. She caught her breath and turned to the small desk in the corner, the one her mother used to write at. On it was a leather-bound book. She recognized it instantly. Her mother's diary. Dusty. Locked. But beside it lay a single key. Shiny. Clean. As if it had been placed there, today. She unlocked it and flipped open the cover. The handwriting inside stopped her heart. To my daughter, Alara, if this reaches you, then the house has awakened again. You must listen. The cycle has returned. The whispers are not in your head. They are part of you. Her throat tightened. She turned the page. I never told you about the bloodline. About the voices that follow the Whitmore women. We hear them. We see what others cannot. And one among us must always stay behind to keep the others free. Alara shivered. Suddenly, the attic door slammed shut behind her. She spun around, no one there. But the mirror. Her reflection was now walking toward her. She was standing still. Dash dash dash. She screamed and threw the book across the room. The moment it hit the floor, the whispers ceased. The reflection froze. Her breath fogged in the air, cold surrounding her like a tight grip around her chest. Then, the lights flickered again. Behind her, in the mirror, a dark figure appeared. Cloaked, faceless. It stood behind her reflection, and slowly raised its hand. She turned. Nothing. The attic was empty. But the mirror now had a handprint smeared in red across it. The same as the one she saw 17 years ago. Alara ran out of the attic, heart racing, hands trembling, her mother's diary clutched against her chest. She ran into her old room, slammed the door, locked it, and slid down against it. The whisper followed. Don't be afraid of me. Be afraid of what you forgot. Outside, the moon had turned blood red. Inside, Alara cried herself to sleep with the diary still in her lap. But before she closed her eyes, she whispered back, "I'm not afraid of you." And from somewhere deep within the walls, it giggled. Alara awoke to pale morning light pouring through the cracked window. Her face was damp with sweat, and the silver locket around her neck burned against her skin. Had it all been a dream? The attic, the mirror, the voice. She looked down. The diary still sat in her lap. Open, real, no dream. Her fingers brushed the pages as she turned to the next entry. If you're reading this, Alara, you have awakened what we sealed away. The house remembers us. The mirror reflects not what is, but what was taken from us. The figure in the attic is the keeper. My mother gave up her soul to bind it. I left clues for you in each room. You must gather them all to understand what happened the night we vanished. But be warned, the more you remember, the more you belong here. Alara slammed the book shut, her hands trembling. She didn't ask for this. She didn't ask for bloodlines or curses. She just wanted closure. Answers. Maybe even forgiveness for leaving. But now she was caught in something far older than grief. She rose from the floor and crossed the hallway into her parents' old bedroom. The scent of lavender still lingered faintly in the dusty air. Photographs littered the shelves. A music box rested on the vanity. She turned the key and let it play. The melody was soft, sad. Her mother's favorite tune. As it played, she noticed a slip of paper sticking out from behind the mirror. She pulled it free. A photograph, torn down the center. It showed her mother, her father, and a man with no face. Not just blurred, completely blank. Her mother had written on the back. He walked between the mirrors. The price we paid was silence. Never speak his name. Alara stared at the photo. Her breathing grew shallow. She turned back to the mirror. And there he was. Not in reflection, but in the room behind her. Tall, shadowed, silent, faceless. She spun around. Gone. The room was empty. The music box had stopped. The melody had ended. But something had changed. The mirror was now cracked down the center. Just like the one in the attic. She backed out slowly, shutting the door behind her. She could hear whispers again, now clearer, closer. Like someone breathing into her ear. 3 days remain. Back downstairs, Alara found the kitchen untouched since the day they disappeared. Plates still sat in the sink. A teacup, unwashed, still held a dark ring of moldy liquid. She opened a drawer and found a note scrawled in red ink. What was buried must return. The house is the heart. And the heart is bleeding. Suddenly the radio flicked on by itself. Static. Then, a child's voice. Ring around the rosy. Alara screamed and yanked the plug from the wall. The static continued. She smashed the radio with a vase. Only then did it stop. Her legs gave out and she collapsed onto the kitchen floor. Tears fell from her eyes. She didn't understand what this house wanted. But it wanted her. The diary lay open on the floor beside her. Another passage had appeared, as if written in invisible ink now revealed by the air. The final chapter begins when the mirror breaks from within. Trust no reflection, not even your own. Alara sobbed into her hands. But somewhere within her, a voice, not the whisper, but her own, rose up. I won't run this time. She stood, gathered the diary, and stared toward the basement door. It was the only place left untouched. The one place her family always warned her to never enter. As her fingers reached for the doorknob, the house trembled. The clock in the hallway struck 3. And behind her, she heard it again. The giggle. But this time, it sounded younger. The basement door had always been locked. As a child, Alara was warned never to go near it. Her father told her it was where the cold lived. Her mother, always gentle, would turn pale at the mention of it. Now she stood before it, diary in hand, her fingers grazing the rotted doorknob. Something deep inside her screamed to turn back. But the whispers had grown louder. The house's breath fogged the air around her. It wasn't haunted by ghosts. It was alive, and it remembered. She slowly opened the door. The scent hit her instantly. Damp soil, rusted metal, old blood. The stairs creaked downward into suffocating blackness. Her flashlight flickered as she descended, the beam cutting through webs that looked like veins crawling across the walls. The deeper she went, the colder it became. At the bottom, the space opened into a wide chamber, earthen walls pulsing like a living lung. Roots dangled from the ceiling like skeletal hands. Broken jars lined the shelves, each one holding strange remnants, bone fragments, hair, rusted jewelry, even teeth. She moved slowly, heart hammering in her ears. And then she saw it. A mirror, half buried in the wall. But this one was different. It wasn't broken. It shimmered, like the surface of water. As she stepped closer, she felt pulled toward it, not physically, but emotionally. Something inside her wanted to touch it. Needed to. The diary buzzed in her hand, warm against her palm. She opened it again. A new line had appeared. Beneath the roots lies the truth. But once you see it, you can never look away. Alara knelt and placed her hand on the mirror's surface. It rippled like liquid. Suddenly, her reflection opened its eyes. She stumbled back. Her reflection hadn't been awake before. It now stared at her. Smiling, crying, mouthing something. She squinted. The reflection whispered, "It was never you who left, it was me." The mirror flickered, and showed a different image. Her mother, holding Alara's hand, then screaming, dragged backward by something unseen. And Alara, just standing there. Expressionless. Watching. Alara gasped. No, that's not what happened. But the image wouldn't change. She turned away, clutching her head. That's not what happened. I ran upstairs. The mirror cracked violently. From behind it, a small door creaked open. A child's voice echoed. Are you ready to remember now? She crawled through the small door behind the mirror. It led into a low tunnel, barely wide enough for her to fit. Her knees scraped against stone. The air was thick and metallic. At the end of the tunnel, she entered a hidden room. And there, she found a crib. Empty. Cobweb covered. But the mobile above it still spun slowly. A name was carved into the wood. Evelyn Whitmore. Her heart froze. That wasn't her name. But it was her face, photographs on the wall of a little girl identical to Alara. Same hair, same smile, but a different name. Her hand shook as she flipped to the back of the diary. Taped inside, was a birth certificate. Evelyn Whitmore, born 2005, deceased, declared missing. Her legs gave out. She couldn't breathe. Her name wasn't Alara. She wasn't who she thought she was. The diary wasn't written by her mother. It was written to her by someone else. She screamed into the silence of the room. And then a lullaby began playing from nowhere. The same one the music box played upstairs. Only now, it was out of tune. Slowed, warped, and behind her, something began to crawl down the tunnel. Alara, or was it Evelyn now, froze in place. The narrow tunnel behind her echoed with soft, wet dragging sounds. Not footsteps, not breathing, something was slithering toward her. Her fingers fumbled to shut the hidden door behind the mirror, but it was too late. Cold air blasted from the tunnel like breath from a grave. She clutched the diary like a shield. The mobile above the crib spun faster. Faster. The lullaby twisted into a warped hum, like a baby crying underwater. The crawling noise grew closer. She turned. In the tunnel's dark mouth, a pair of white, lidless eyes stared at her. Then, it grinned. Alara screamed and bolted from the hidden nursery, crawling through the tunnel, scraping her knees, gasping as whispers poured into her ears. You were never her daughter. You were the replacement. They chose you. She burst out of the wall and stumbled into the basement chamber. The mirror behind her cracked further, bleeding black ichor from its corners. The house groaned around her. The walls pulsed like a heartbeat. And from upstairs, she heard something slam. The front door. Someone had entered the house. She ran up the basement stairs, skipping steps, panting as shadows curled at her ankles. At the top, she paused, hand on the railing, chest heaving. A man stood in the living room. Tall, dressed in black, his face hidden beneath a hat. Not the faceless figure. Someone else. Who are you? She shouted, voice cracking. He turned slowly. "You don't remember me," he said, voice calm. "But you buried me in this house." Her stomach dropped. "I don't, what are you talking about?" He stepped forward. "You were 5, and I was the one who saw too much. So your parents made you forget me." He lifted his head. His face shimmered, half real, half rotted. She backed away. "I didn't do anything," she cried. "You forgot. That was enough. Dash dash dash." Suddenly, every mirror in the house shattered at once. The sound was deafening. Shards of memory flew into the air like dust in a storm. In each broken piece, she saw glimpses. Her parents arguing in the attic. Her holding a candle beside a crib. A man chained in the basement. And herself, smiling as they locked the door. She fell to her knees. "No, that's not me. That can't be me." The man in black knelt beside her. "Truth is a mirror, Evelyn," he whispered. "You broke it. And now, every piece cuts you." He vanished. Dash dash dash. The diary in her hands caught fire. She screamed and threw it across the room, but it didn't burn. It floated, mid-air, pages flipping on their own. The house whispered through every wall. The bedroom was too perfect. Too still. Alara stepped back from the mirror, her breath fogging the air. The girl in the reflection, Evelyn Whitmore, smiled sweetly, but there was something off in her eyes. They weren't innocent. They were knowing. Almost mocking. Alara turned away, heart pounding. The family photograph in her hand was now cold as ice, and her face had faded completely from it. Only Evelyn remained, with her parents, her home, her life. "This isn't real," she whispered. But the walls around her pulsed in response, as if the house disagreed. A low whisper echoed through the room. "You were the replacement. Dash dash dash." The door creaked open behind her. She turned sharply. The hallway beyond wasn't the one she remembered. It had turned into a corridor of doors, each one pulsing with faint light. Each one with a name engraved in the wood. She walked past the first door, Eleanor Whitmore. The second, David Whitmore. Her parents. The third door, Evelyn Whitmore. She stopped. Her name, or the name she was told was hers, glowed softly. She reached for the handle, trembling. The moment she touched it, the room dissolved around her. Dash dash dash. She stood in a hospital ward now. Dim lights flickered above her. Empty beds lined the walls. And at the far end, one bed still occupied. A small girl lay under the sheets, her face pale, lips blue. A nurse passed through Alara's body like mist, tending to the child. And beside the bed, stood her parents. Crying. The doctor whispered something. The monitor beeped flat. "No," Alara whispered. "No, this isn't real." But the scene didn't fade. Her mother sobbed into her father's chest. The nurse slowly covered the child's face. Evelyn Whitmore was dead. Dash dash dash. Alara stumbled backward, bumping into a chair that hadn't been there before. On it, another diary. Not hers. This one was small, pink, childish. She picked it up and opened to the first page. A child's handwriting filled it. "They said I can't wake up. But I still dream. I saw another girl today. She was standing at the window. She looked just like me. I think she wants to come inside." The next entry. "They brought her home. She has my face. She has my name. But she's not me. I don't like her. Mommy stopped calling me her star. Now she calls her that. I don't like her at all." Alara dropped the diary. Tears welled in her eyes. "What am I?" The shadows in the ward twisted around her. The mirror on the far wall showed both girls now. Evelyn. And her. Two versions. Same face. Same eyes. But different souls. And the real one wasn't her. Dash dash dash. The hospital faded. Now she stood in the cemetery behind the house. Her feet sunk slightly into soft earth. Fog rolled over the graves. And ahead of her stood a single, small headstone. Evelyn Whitmore. 2005-2010. Our shining star. She fell to her knees. Everything, her memories, her family, her name, was a lie. She hadn't been born into the house. She'd been invited in, welcomed, chosen to replace. "Why me?" she whispered to the grave. The wind answered. "Because you looked the part. Because something had to fill the void she left behind. Because the mirror liked you." Dash dash dash. Suddenly, the ground shook. The grave split open. From within, a hand reached out, small, pale, childlike. And behind her, the whisper returned. "Time's up, Evelyn." She turned, and Evelyn stood there. Not a ghost, not a shadow. Alive, breathing, real, but not human. Eyes glowing faintly, skin too smooth, smile too wide. You lived the life meant for me, Evelyn said, voice filled with venom and sorrow. And now it's mine again. Dash dash dash. Alara tried to run, but the grave pulled her in. Hands, dozens of them, clawed at her legs, her waist, her arms. Sobbing, screaming, she grabbed the diary and held it to her chest. But this time, it didn't save her. It whispered instead. There's only room for one. Alara clawed at the grave soil, her lungs screaming for air. The ghostly hands dragged her deeper, cold fingers digging into her arms and legs. The world narrowed into dirt, shadow, and the piercing voice of Evelyn echoing above. You took my life. Now I take yours. The sky disappeared. And then, silence. Total, choking silence. Alara blinked. She was no longer in the grave. She stood in a mirror realm, endless and silver. The ground was glass. The sky was glass. Reflections surrounded her, infinite versions of herself, each one slightly different. One was smiling with blood on her hands. One was a child. One looked exactly like Evelyn. And one stood directly in front of her, breathing in sync. But her eyes were empty. Not sad. Not angry. Just hollow. Dash dash dash. Where am I? She whispered. The reflections spoke in unison. Inside yourself. Suddenly, Evelyn stepped into the mirrored realm, not as a reflection, but real. Her bare feet made no sound as she approached, white dress glowing in the silver world. You broke the rules, Evelyn said coldly. You were never supposed to remember. Never supposed to dig, but you had to know. Alara took a shaky step back. I didn't know who I was. No, Evelyn said. You still don't. She raised her hand. The reflections twisted, showing scenes Alara never remembered. A little girl being chosen in a hospital. Doctors whispering to her parents. An ancient mirror delivered in a wooden crate. And the girl, Alara, walking through it. Not born. Invited. Dash dash dash. You're not a person, Evelyn whispered. You're a reflection. A hollow. The house made you. Alara trembled. I'm real. You're real because I died. That's the deal this place made. One soul in, one soul out. The mirror realm rippled with her words. You stole my life, my parents, my future. No, Alara screamed. I didn't ask for this. You didn't refuse it either. Dash dash dash. The ground cracked beneath them. From the depths of the mirrored floor, the house's true voice rose, a deep, inhuman growl that shook the world. Choose. Alara and Evelyn froze. The reflections shattered. Only one remained, showing both girls side by side. One heart, one soul, one body. The house demanded a final truth. Only one could stay. Dash dash dash. Evelyn lunged. The two collided, screaming, sobbing, their fingers clawing, their minds colliding in memories that weren't just theirs anymore. They fell through mirrors. Through the hospital again. The nursery. The grave. The attic. The hidden tunnels. Each room whispered a name. Alara. Evelyn. Alara. Evelyn. And then, a choice. Dash dash dash. Alara found herself holding the diary again, this time with a knife lodged between its pages. A note beside it, written in her own hand. The mirror only lies until you stop looking. She turned. Evelyn stood before her, no longer glowing. No longer cruel. Just tired. I don't want to fight anymore, she whispered. Then stop haunting me, Alara said. I wasn't haunting you. I was trying to return home. Dash dash dash. The house shook. The floor cracked again. The mirror between them shivered like water. And Alara knew what the house wanted. A sacrifice. To keep the balance. To feed the curse. I can't live knowing I stole your life, Alara said. You didn't, Evelyn whispered. You were made from my grief. Dash dash dash. They joined hands. The mirror exploded. And the girls screamed together. The blast of light from the shattered mirror hurled Alara backward. She hit the floor, hard, but it wasn't glass anymore. It was wood. Old, groaning, familiar. The attic. She was back in the house. Breathing, bleeding, alone. She sat up, wincing. Evelyn was gone. No glowing presence, no whispers. Just stillness. Only the wind tapped gently on the attic window. But something was wrong. The room was not the way she left it. The trunk in the corner was wide open. The mirror was gone, and in its place, a door. A door that hadn't existed before.
Its surface was carved with ancient symbols. Not letters, not words, but something older, primal. And in the center, a keyhole shaped like a heart. Alara felt her chest tighten. She had no key. Or did she? Dash dash dash. She opened the diary again. One final page had appeared. In handwriting that wasn't hers. Or Evelyn's. But both. The lock needs memory. The key is truth. The price is blood. Below it, taped carefully, was a folded photograph. Of her. Of Evelyn. Of them, together. Not in a reflection, but side by side. In the same frame. Same face. Different smiles. Real. For a moment, Alara forgot to breathe. Dash dash dash. The door pulsed once. Thud. Like a heartbeat. She approached. The photograph trembled in her hand, then burned to ash. The keyhole hissed. A slit appeared in her palm, unprovoked. A single drop of blood fell onto the heart-shaped lock. Click. The door opened. Dash dash dash. On the other side was nothingness. A swirling, endless void of colorless fog and windless sky. But she could hear voices. Her father's laugh. Her mother humming. And Evelyn, whispering, softly, like she used to before bedtime. You can still choose. You can still go back. But you can't bring both. Dash dash dash. Alara stepped into the void. The world behind her closed with a thunderous slam. She was suspended, neither falling nor flying. And in front of her now stood a version of herself wearing white, glowing with gentle sorrow. And behind that version, another, wearing black, eyes rimmed red from tears. They spoke in unison. One must stay forgotten. One must be remembered. Dash dash dash. Suddenly, a screen appeared in the void, like a giant memory reel. It showed moments from both their lives. Evelyn's birthday with pink balloons. Alara's first snow. Evelyn crying in the hospital. Alara laughing with her father over burnt toast. The reel kept switching, back and forth, memory and memory, grief and joy, real and made. Choose who gets to exist, the void whispered. And the house will rewrite the past. Dash dash dash. Alara fell to her knees. I can't, I don't want to erase anyone. You must, the white version said softly. Or the house will collapse. And take you both. The black-eyed version approached and knelt beside her. I was never meant to last, she said. I was made of sorrow. I lived in borrowed light. No, Alara cried. You're more than that. You felt real. You were real. So were dreams, the girl replied. But they fade. Dash dash dash. Alara wept. Not because she had to make a choice. But because she knew it was already made. She reached forward. And touched the shoulder of the black-eyed version. I remember you, she whispered. And I always will. And with that, the white version vanished. Like mist in dawn. Dash dash dash. The void shuddered. And Alara fell. Dash dash dash. She woke in her bedroom. Sunlight poured through the window. The attic was quiet above her. No mirrors. No whispers. Just silence. She looked at the diary. Every page was blank now. Except for one line. Thank you for remembering me. She looked around. The house felt lighter. But deep down, she knew. The curse hadn't lifted. It had settled. Because she had accepted the truth. She
wasn't Evelyn. But she was born from her, and that made her story just as real. The world had changed. Not just outside, but inside her. Alara felt it in her bones, in the way the house no longer whispered secrets through the walls, no longer creaked like it was breathing. But even in peace, there are shadows. Especially when the peace is borrowed. Dash dash dash. She walked the hallways with bare feet, the floorboards soft with years. Dust motes floated in sunbeams like ghosts dancing in silence. Each picture frame along the wall held a new clarity. Family photos that once faded now sharpened into vibrant memory. Her mother's warm smile, her father's thick-rimmed glasses, her own face, no longer uncertain. But one frame remained covered in a dark cloth. It had always been that way. Even her parents had avoided it. Drawn by a new kind of courage, or maybe guilt, Alara reached for the cloth. Her fingers trembled as she pulled it back. Behind it was a painting, not a photo. An oil portrait of Evelyn, as a little girl, standing in a white dress. Her expression unreadable, serene, but her eyes screamed with a message that only Alara could hear. You chose to remember me. Dash dash dash. The portrait shivered, not moved, shivered, like something behind it breathed. Alara leaned closer. The edges of the frame seemed wet, dripping faintly. She reached out and touched the bottom corner. The wall groaned. And slowly, soundlessly, the painting swung open like a door. Behind it, darkness waited. Not just shadow, but depth. A staircase, spiraling downward into a part of the house no one ever knew existed. She hesitated. The house had been quiet. Still, she could pretend it was over. Close the painting, walk away. But Alara had grown tired of pretending. With the diary gone and the mirror shattered, she had only herself now. And something deep below wanted to be found. She descended the staircase, each step cold as stone. The air grew thicker, damper, charged with silence that pressed on her skull like invisible hands. There were carvings along the walls, similar to those on the attic door. Runes, warnings, or maybe memories. And then, a door, old, wood split down the middle. As if something had once tried to break out, or in. She pushed. The door gave way. Inside was a room of portraits. Thousands. Paintings of children, some smiling, some crying, some screaming. Each portrait bore a small brass plaque. Ava, age 7, forgotten in 1883. Liam, age 10, swallowed 1901. Nora, age 4, remembered but not returned. And then she found the one that made her legs buckle. Alara, age unknown, claimed, 2003. Her breath caught. Her hand flew to her mouth. Behind her, something whispered. Now you see. She turned slowly. Evelyn stood at the far end of the room. But she was different now. Older. No longer glowing. Her skin was pale, eyes hollowed by time, but she smiled. You were never meant to see this, Evelyn said softly. This is where the house keeps what it takes. All of us. Children who slipped through mirrors, fell into shadows, got forgotten. Alara stared. Then why am I here? Why am I still real? Evelyn stepped forward. Because you chose to remember. That gives you power. But power doesn't come free. Alara looked back at the portrait with her name. What if I give it back? She asked. Will this all go away? No, Evelyn said. Because what the house takes, it never returns. But it can be worn. She knelt beside the portrait. There was space beneath the brass plaque. For another word. Her hand moved instinctively, as if guided by something old and knowing. With her fingernail, she scratched one final word. Witness. The walls trembled. The candles in the room flickered violently. And all the portraits turned to face her. Thousands of eyes. Watching. Acknowledging. Remembering. And then, everything went still. Evelyn's voice was barely audible now. Leave this room, Alara. Never return. Alara rose slowly. Will I forget this? You'll try, Evelyn said. But the house won't let you. And you. All remain. Where I've always been. Between the stories people stop telling. Alara climbed the staircase back to the living world. Behind her, the door sealed shut. The portrait of Evelyn once again just a painting. But this time, her eyes no longer screamed. They smiled. That night, Alara sat on her bed and opened a fresh journal. She began to write, not just about ghosts or curses, but about all the children no one remembers. Their names, their dreams, their echoes. And when she looked into the mirror, she no longer saw a haunted girl. She saw a witness, a keeper of lost stories. Alara's hands trembled as she shut the fresh journal. The pages had barely cooled from the ink, yet her chest ached like she'd written with her blood. Outside her window, a storm brewed. But it wasn't rain she feared anymore. It was memory. She stood slowly, walked to the hallway, and looked once more at the portrait of Evelyn. No longer haunted. No longer hiding a passage. Just, still. She ran a hand across the frame. You're not gone, she whispered. You're just remembered differently. Suddenly, a creak echoed from below. From the first floor, the living room. Alara froze. Every light in the hallway dimmed. Her breath misted in the air. Cold. Like the attic. Like the void. Like before. She descended the staircase with deliberate steps. Each creak beneath her feet felt louder than the last. And as she reached the landing, she saw it. In the center of the living room floor. A circle of ash. Still smoking. Still warm. Inside it, a mirror stood upright, tall, jagged, cracked in the shape of a spiderweb. And in its reflection, not her, but Evelyn. Again, this time smiling. Behind her, the room reflected was burning. Alara rushed forward. Evelyn, what is this? But Evelyn didn't move. She just lifted a finger and pointed, downward. Beneath the ash circle, the floor split, revealing a hidden trapdoor. The mirror vanished in a whisper of embers. Alara stared at the trapdoor. Another secret. Another place the house had hidden until now. She pulled it open. A short ladder descended into what looked like an old cellar. She could smell the damp wood, the mold, the dust of decades, and flowers, roses, dead ones. Alara climbed down. The space below was filled with rows of white wooden crosses, like a graveyard under the house, each marked with a name. Some familiar, some foreign, some missing, and one, in the farthest corner, glowed faintly. Evelyn Grace Hollow. Born. Unknown. Died. Remembered. Alara knelt beside it. Tears fell freely now. You're buried here, she whispered. You were part of this house, all along. And then she heard it. Behind her, a heartbeat. Loud. Slow. Heavy. She turned, and the room was gone. Replaced by the attic again. The mirror fully intact. The diary back in her hands. But this time, every page was filled with names, dates, drawings, bloodstains. It was no longer her diary. It was the house's, a record of every life it had touched. Taken, torn. Alara stared at the last line on the final page. She remembered. So we let her leave. Her head spun. She ran to the attic door. It opened on the first try. She sprinted down the stairs, out the front door, into the night, but the street was gone. No neighborhood, no city lights, only trees, dead ones, blackened sky, and the house behind her now looked different. Rotting, empty, like it hadn't been lived in for years. A voice came from behind her. Soft, like a breeze. You saw too much. It wasn't Evelyn. It was the house itself. A shape formed from shadows and wood, stitched together from fragments of staircases and broken windows. You remembered what we tried to erase. Alara turned slowly. I won't forget, she said. Not anymore. The shape paused, then slowly, vanished. Sunlight pierced through the trees. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, she felt warmth. Not heat, but peace. The house behind her faded, piece by piece, brick by brick, like it was never built to last. Only to test. And she had passed. She walked forward into the woods. Diary in hand, heart heavy, but hers again. She knew the memories would never fade. Not fully, but they no longer owned her. She was the witness now. The storyteller. And maybe that's all anyone trapped in a haunted place ever needs, to be believed.